Hello friend, this is part 2 of the interview video. This video is helpful for aspirants preparing for SBI Special Officer interview, IBPS IT Officer interview and UPSC candidate. So here we go with our questions. So what is the difference between SSD and hard disk? So SSD stands for solid state drive, and it uses a microchip to store data instead of any magnetic surface to store the data. As such, in the hard disk we use a magnetic tape to store the data, in which a magnetic arm moves around that storage platter to read and write. There are various platter placed one over the another, and a mechanical arm moves around the platter to read particular sector or a track. So we again distinguish between solid state drive using various attributes such as power drawn. The solid state drives consume very less power as compared to hard disk drive. It is consumed 2 to 3 volt and hence boost the battery of notebook or ultrabook, since it consumes less power. Whereas in the case of hard disk drive, average power consumption is 6 to 7 volts, and it comparatively consumes more power. And cost factor, SSD is more costly than hard disk drive. Then next factor is capacity. In generally, solid state drives have a capacity from 1 TB to maximum 4 TB. 1 TB maximum for the notebook and 4 TB for the desktop. Whereas in hard disk drive, they vary from 60 GB to 2 TB and maximum 10 TB for the desktop. And operating system, this time taken by them to boot an operating system. SSD are much faster. They can load operating system comparatively in 10 to 13 seconds, and whereas the SSD are taking 30 to 40 seconds to load an operating system. Noise, since there is no moving part, so there is no noise produced by the solid state drive. Whereas in SSD we can hear an audible click and spinning of magnetic arm. Vibration, no vibration in solid state drive SSD, but in case of spinning, in case of hard disk drive, there may be a small magnitude of vibration by result of spinning of platter, and heat produced, since it's to use microchips, no measurable heat produced. But in case of SSD, some amount of heat is produced due to moving part. Next is failure rate. SSD have a very minimum failure rate. One failure hits 20 million hours, and as compared to SSD, hard disk drive have a comparatively much failure rate. And if we talk about the file copy or writing speed, SSD solid state drives are much faster. Their writing speed vary from 200 MB per second to 500 MB per second. In case of hard disk drive, it vary from 50 to 120 MB. And encryption, it supports solid state drive support the full disk encryption, and as well as the hard disk drive also support the full script encryption. File opening speed, since SSD is 30% faster than hard disk drives. And magnetic effect, since SSD store the data in microchip, there is no effect of magnetism, whereas in case of hard disk, a magnet can erase the data. Next is ultrabook. An ultra is a thin, lightweight portable device with processing power like notebook, and it use solid state drive to store as secondary storage. So ultrabook is faster in terms of disk operation, have a great persistence and better performance. And next question is communication with 2 PC. Various means we can communicate between 2 PC using LAN, serial port and parallel port. Their pros and cons. So first one is LAN. What is a LAN? LAN is a networking infrastructure in groups of networks, in which group of networks and peripherals are connected in a topology under a small geographical area, such as in office, home or a building. In LAN topology, we can make a LAN network using Ethernet cables, and these Ethernet cables can be configured in 2 ways: straight and crossover. In straight cabling, both ends are connected in parallel fashion, such as register jack. Pin 1 of the register jack 1 is connected to the pin 1 of the another end of a LAN, and so a straight cable is used to connect computers to a hub. Normal connector computer to hub or a switch, or also used to connect computer to the DSL modem or LAN port, and it helps in connect routers WAN port to the DSL LAN port. And whereas cross cable is used to connect two computers directly, or it helps in connect router LAN port to the switch or hubs normal port, and connect two switches or hubs directly. This is configuration for straight cable, in which pin 1 end of the register jack 45 having pin 1 directly connected to the pin 1 of the another end, in where register jack 45 2 is lies. So pin 1 here at this end, pin 1 is connected to the other end pin 1, and in this way all 8 pins are connected. But in case of cross cable, pin 1 is connected to the pin 3 of another end, pin 2 is connected to crossover with the pin 6, pin 3 is crossover with pin 1, P4 and P5 are directly connected, pin 6 is crossover with pin 2, pin 7 and pin 8 are directly connected. So in this way crossover cable is formed. Here the 8 pins of this is register jack 45, RJ45, and this is parallel port configuration. Again parallel port configuration. This table shows the what Ethernet cabling you use for connect hub to a hub. For similar devices we use crossover cables. So to connect to hub we use crossover cables. Hub to switch we use crossover cable again, because hub and switch are same level devices. Hub to router we use straight cable, hub to workstation we use straight cable, switch to hub we use crossover cable, and switch to switch crossover, and connect to switch to router and workstation we use straight cables. To connect router to hub or switch we use straight cable. To connect router to router or workstation we use cross cable. To connect workstation to hub or switch we use straight cable, but to connect workstation to router or workstation we use cross cable. So in this way we use different configuration to connect various devices So another way to connect the two devices is serial port. A serial port is a connector by which a device that sends a data a one bit at a time to connect to a computer. A serial port uses asynchronous form of communication to connect to computer. The most common serial port ports are communication port 1, in which we connect mouse, and communication port 2, in which connect our keyboard, and other examples may be used in we connect modem using the serial ports. And after that, what is the method of parallel ports? Parallel ports are used to connect various devices that sends and receives multiple bits at a time. So they, in this way, they are much faster than the serial ports, but are slower than the LAN port or asynchronous USB method. Or example of serial ports are printer and scanner. And the main difference between serial and parallel port is that serial port transfer 1 bit at a time, whereas parallel port transfer 8 bit of data at a time. In this way, parallel port is much faster than the serial port. The cons of these are advantage and disadvantage of parallel and serial ports. And now the next question: what is a prime number? The prime number and use of prime number in programming language. As you all know, the prime numbers are numbers which have no co-prime factor other than the number itself and 1. So a prime number has two factors only: the number itself and the 1. So its help in network security and cryptography. In network security, we use prime numbers in cryptography and steganographies, and the most advanced secured cryptographic algorithms such as RSA use the prime number to secure to provide the encryption. And prime number also used in testing array and matrix code to find the bugs in the array and matrix code. And the sub question of this question is how does a bank generate an OTP? And basically, OTP is a one-time password, is an automatically generated alphanumeric strings that used to authenticate a user for a single session or a single transaction. Now move to the next question. What is alpha and beta testing? In a software development scenario, if we consider the testing phase of a software, this includes pre-alpha phase, alpha phase, beta phase, release candidate and release phase. So the pre-alpha phase is a in which software is a prototype. UI development part is completed, but not all the feature of software are ready to use. And after a pre-alpha phase, we have alpha phase. Pre-alpha phase gives the prototype look of the software product, and whereas in alpha phase, it is the development part is near about to finish, and all internal testing are done to find the bugs and issues. And next is what is beta testing. So once the product is developed, it is not released. It just releases stable versions to limited user to identify and to test the software under real constraints, so that necessary bugs or issues can be found and and software would be tested in a real environment. So in beta phase it is released to a limited number of users, and after feedback received from the beta phase, necessary changes are implemented, and finally the product is released released to the public along with its documentation part. So in this way the whole testing phase moves. So what is an alpha testing? Alpha testing is in-house testing in which we use black box or white box testing. Black box testing is a type of testing in which we consider the functionality of the software components, and we are not caring about how the actual implementation of those functionalities. Where in the white box testing we test the internal components and functions of the software, and in white box testing we generate. In black box testing we use test cases to check and find the bugs. So next part is alpha testing. Difference between alpha and beta testing. So as I already said, the alpha testing is in-house testing and beta testing is testing at the client side. So alpha test is performed by the tester, by developer within the organization, whereas beta testing is performed at the client side, and alpha testing is performed developer side. It is beta testing is performed at client location. Reliability and security testing is not performed in depth at alpha testing. In beta testing, reliability, security and robust are checked during the beta testing. In alpha testing involve both white box as well as black box testing. In beta box testing we use only the black box testing. Next, the alpha testing requires lab environment or testing environment, but the in beta testing the actual environment is used to run the software and find the issues in running the software. So in the alpha testing, long execution cycle is required, whereas in beta testing, few to months or few weeks of execution are required. Critical issues can be addressed immediately by the developer. In the beta testing, feedbacks are considered in future versions of the software. In alpha testing, the quality of product is ensured before moving to the beta testing. In beta testing, consideration of quality of the product and gathering inputs on the product and ensure the product is ready for the real-time users. So so in this way the beta testing gives the advantage of reducing chances of product failure, as it validated by customers validate it, and beta testing allows a customer to post-launch infrastructure, improve quality via the customer feed, and cost-effective comparison to similar data gathering methods. And in this way beta testing is helpful. And as we go now is what is black box testing? Black box testing is a method of software testing that examines the functionality of an application without peering into the internal structure. And this method of test applies to the virtually every level of software testing: unit, integrity, system and acceptance. In this method of testing, we test perform integrating testing, unit testing, system testing and acceptance testing. Whereas in in white box testing, it is also called clear box testing, glass box testing or transparent box testing, in which we test the internal structure or working of an application as opposed to its functionality. So this is white box testing. And now moving to the next question, what does a web browser and what is a remote desktop? To answer this question, if you consider a server client model in which let us suppose this is a server and this is client, and on a client side, if a software called a software component which is called a browser sends a request to the server for some particular file using the HTTP method, in response server gives that files using in response to the client request. So this file is interpreted and displayed by the browser on client screen. So in this architecture, the client on client side, web browser sends a request for a particular site, and that request is processed by server, and the required file is sent to the browser, and browser then interpret that file and display it to the So in this way, the browser have various internal components such as user interface, browser engine, rendering engine, and rendering engine have further networking components, JavaScript interpreter, and UI backend. And what is a user interface? A user interface is a space which helps to interact between the user and the browser. And most of the browsers have common inputs for user interface such as address bar, next and back button, refresh button, and bookmarks, so on. Okay. Now the browser engine. What the browser engine? It is a piece of code that communicates the input of the user interface with the rendering engine. It is responsible for querying and manipulating the rendering engine according to the inputs from the various interfaces. Next is what is rendering engine. In response, it draw the response from the requested content on the screen. It first passes the HTML tags, then use styles, and it builds a render tree, and finally a render layout which displays the content in the screen. And what is about the networking component? In the networking component, function of code written in the browser responsible to send a various networking call. For example, sending the HTTP request to the server. Then JavaScript interpreter, it interprets the JavaScript code to present a web page, and UI backend is draw widget on the browsers like combo box and Windows. And next is data storage, which create database based on local drive of the computer, and these database stores various files such as cache and cookies. And the sub question of this is, what is the remote desktop? Remote desktop is a program in an operating system that allow a user to connect to a remote computer and interact with a screen of that remote computer as it behaves in its local environment. And next is, what is network security and what is DDoS attack? In network security, what is DDoS attack? To answer this question, first we understand what is a DDoS attack. DDoS is a cyber attack where the predator seeks to make a machine or resource unavailable for the intended user by temporarily or defining interrupting services of host connected to the internet. In simple words, we say that denial of DOS attacks makes a machines unable to its intended user. And in a distributed DD attack in DD attack means it's a distributed denial of services in which multiple systems flood into the bandwidth or resources of a target system, in response of which the target system is unable to fulfill the request of its intended user. Such an attack is often result in multiple compromising systems such as botnet and flooding the target system with traffics. And moving to the next question, what is IoT? IoT stands for Internet of Things. What are the Internet of Things? If we consider the embedded systems, if an embedded system connect to if we enable an embedded system to intercommunicate to a computer via internet, then it's become an Internet of Things, and it is enabled to send or receive the data. For example, if we consider pacemaker system, pacemaker which monitor the heart, and if we enable it to receive, enable it to control via the internet, in this way we can monitor the patient's health from a remote systems and monitor a per second data of the patient. In result, the patient will be the patient's monitoring will be better and efficient. And another example may be considered, if we consider air conditioners that are fitted with communicating devices or circuitry, and enable it to connect to local area networks, and the user operate it using their smartphone. And this is the example of another example of Internet of Things. Or if we consider to control our modems, wireless switches using smartphones, these are all the part of the Internet of Things. All small embedded devices connected to the networks and enable them to control using the internet is called Internet of Things. And going to the next question, what is quantum computer? A quantum computer is a computer that make use of quantum state of a subatomic particle to store the information. And moving to the next question, what is SQL database? What is primary and secondary keys? SQL is structured query language, whereas SQL database use a relational structure to create databases in form of tables, in form collection of various tables and records. A primary key is a unique identifier for a discrete object on a table, and whereas a secondary key provide a second reference to this primary key if a primary key is inadequately distinguish them for a reference purpose. So if we consider a primary key for a person, maybe its social security number, its online username, its unique name, and these parameters are considered for a primary key, and these social security number or a online username can uniquely treated to identify its discrete identity. And for considering secondary key, we can consider various tuples of tables such as address, phone number, and middle name. In that event, if we consider the secondary key is considered in the case of if primary key is not enough to distinguish an object, so secondary key is created to make the object unique. So secondary key is a second reference to the primary key. And moving to the next question, what is an Oracle database? An Oracle it is also a relational database. In question is, in Oracle database, what is the maximum space for a table? Practical, there is no limit, or if we consider practical, there is no limit for the maximum size of the space unless the hard disk runs out of the space. Otherwise, it depends upon the size of block that represents the table in the database. If we consider a table that is represented by 8K size block, then we can maximum size of table can be 32 TB. If we consider a table that can be represented using 32K block, then maximum 128 TB size of table can be created. And in this way, the size of table, it depends upon the block that represents the table. So there is practically there is no limitation, but logically there may be limitations for how the table is represented. Moving to the next question, the difference between what is the difference between rack server, blade server, rack server, blade server, and tower server? So the tower server are normally tower shaped server in which component are placed one over the another. In tower server space they occupy is consider racks, they are mounted inside such letter over the letter. And in rack server, racks are used to place the various components. If we consider this diagram, this is an example of blade server in which server components are placed in a single space. And if we consider the rack, in the various components of server are placed in a single rack, just as their motherboard or a CPU, fan, and various components. So blade and rack are looking similar, but there are major differences in allowing their component. In blade, the component are placed vertically in this way, whereas in the rack they are placed in horizontal manner, one over the another. These are major differences. And this is a tower server. And moving to the next question, difference between the API and DLL. API stands for Application Programming Interface, and API is an interface implemented by a software that enables it to interact with the another software, and it facilitate interaction between the different software program. Similarly, a user interface to a software. Whereas DLL is a dynamic library, is also a way of providing the API. It is an interface that is interface to the programmer. And next question is, what is an assembly language? Can a Java is core assembly language? And window, how window is created? Window is creating using which language? So assembly language is a low level language which use Unix for the low level programming. So in assembly language, a programmer is considered about the underlying hardware implementation, how it must be well aware about the underlying hardware, its system buses, CPU, architecture. It must be so he must be consider all the hardware implementation. In assembly language, we write code for the device driver and low-level embedded system and real-time systems. So next question is, can a Java is core assembly language? Java can be used to write a program for the device drivers, low-level assembly language, but it's not a core assembly language. C and C++ be considered as a core assembly language. How window is created using which language? Window is created using C++. And if we consider another operating system such as Linux, which is developed using the C language, and Mac operating system, which is developed using the Objective-C, Android using the Java, Solaris is using C, C++, and iOS using the Objective-C. And here again the same description. Windows is written in C, C++, and some assembly code, and Android in Java and C++, and operating system X in Objective-C, and Ubuntu, which is an open source based software, is written in Unity C++. And going to the next question, what is Li-Fi technology? What is Li-Fi? And Li-Fi technology to connect internet using LED bulb. How does it works? So what is a Li-Fi? Li-Fi stands for light fidelity. It is a new technology that uses light wave instead of the radio wave to carry the data across the various communicating device, and an improved LED bulb functions as a router. So how does a Li-Fi work? For an ordinary off-the-shore LED bulbs connect to a device, which in turn connect to the internet. The internet data flow via the device into the bulb and is carried by the light waves. On other hand, light wave carry the internet data fallen on the receiver dongle, which is connected to the computer. So what are the benefits of using the Li-Fi? Since Li-Fi use visible light spectrum, which is available in plenty and unlicensed and free to use, and it provides the dual benefit that it provides light as well as the access to the internet. And since low interference of the light leads to a very high data speed, Li-Fi works even under the water, or normally, unlike the RF that can interface the electronic circuitry, but since Li-Fi use visible light spectrum, it cannot be interfaced with the electronic circuitry. And since light wave does not pass through the opaque objects, and the possibility of eavesdropping is nearly impossible, and LED illusion is already efficient, and data transfer need very little additional power, or it is considered to be 1,000 times faster than the Wi-Fi, so hence greater speed and much more reliability than Wi-Fi. Now consider moving to the next question. Microsoft Aadhaar as a function of authentication with its video calling services Skype. How can it help in public services? If Microsoft use Aadhaar card as a factor of authentication, then using such authentication method we can create an infrastructure in which a court appeal or a voice-based RTI can be filed using ICTC with the help of ICT tools, and even the various telemedicines and e-courts and UPSC and interviews can be performed from the house without visiting to the actual places. And moving to the next question, what is the net neutrality? And various example of violation of net neutrality in real life. So net neutrality is basically the principle that internet service provider should enable access to all content application regardless of their source and without favoring or blocking a particular product or web services. And so this issue is very common and in news today, because companies such as Airtel, Reliance support net neutrality, and this they consider to be have some biasing to the some service provider that pay well worse for the bandwidth, so enable their content to be easily be accessible, and whereas on other hand application and resources of other are blocked in the concept of net neutrality. So what are the examples of violation of net neutrality in real life? In real life we see that there are large queues in temple during Mahashivratri or Durga Puja. So VIP people make their VIP darshan using the back doors of the temple. So in this way they violate the concept of equal access to the equal resource. And using IC in hospital, we say that common people suffers to take advice from good doctors, whereas rich and reachable peoples make an easy way to get those services. And these are the examples of violations. And the last question, what is Google Glass, how it works, how will you use it in medical, police, public service and smart administration? The Google Glass is a smart device that display an output of a smartphone or electronic device in a hand-free format. This is the Google Glass. How it is used? So using the Google Glass technique, we can display an output of a public CCTV camera on a patrolling car in this way. So moving to next question, what is a beam? This is a recently launched application to make easy and quick payment of transaction using UPI, and it is easier than a wallet. And so once you connect a beam app to your account, you can make e-transaction in a very hassle-free manner. So what is a UPI? UPI is a unified payment interface, is an instant payment system developed by the NPCI, which is National Payment Corporation of India, and RBI regulatory entity, and UPI is built over the IBPS infrastructure, allow you to instantly transfer money between two parties' bank account. So how safe is BHIM? BHIM is very safe because it required you to UPI pin, which is known to only the known to its legitimate user, and hence prevents the unauthorized access. And it is advisable to never share your UPI pin with the others, with any other person. Or all transactions initiated over the BHIM are carried over the secure bank network, and all the communication between BHIM and bank are over the encrypted channel. So what is an UPI pin? A UPI pin is a UPI personal identification pin, which is a secret code created during the first time registration with the app, and you have to enter the UPI pin to authorize all bank transactions. If you have already set up UPI pin with other UPI apps, you can use the same on BHIM. And it is to be noted that banks issue an MPIN which is different from UPI pin, and please generate a new UPI pin in the BHIM app. So we have to not share this UPI pin with the other entity, and never bank ask for this UPI pin. So these are all about this, the today's interview important interview questions. So if you like this, please share, subscribe this channel, and thank you.